Welcome back to the deep dive. This is where we take dense, complex source material and, well, we break it all down for you, pulling out the key insights so you're instantly up to speed. And today we are diving into something huge, a really fascinating look at large scale urban infrastructure. Our source material is an incredibly detailed book by Eduardo Moreno L. called Smart Cities China's Model of Success. Now, that's a massive topic, so our mission today is very surgical. We're focusing entirely on Chapter 13, Standardization and Cooperation. We really want to get to the bottom of how this seemingly dry concept of standards is actually the hidden engine driving China's whole smart city model, according to Moreno, is what we're calling him.
And that focus is so important. Because when you think smart city, your mind probably jumps to the flashy tech, right? The AI managing traffic, all the sensors, the 5G networks.
Yeah.
But Moreno forces us to look underneath all of that. He argues that the visible tech is only possible because of this invisible scaffolding holding it all together. Standards are that fundamental framework. They're what makes these incredibly complex urban systems not just work, but work efficiently, securely, and, this is the critical part, at a scale that can serve hundreds of millions of people.
Okay, let's unpack that. Segment one, the non-negotiable need for standards. We're talking about cities where everything is interconnected, the Internet of Things, AI, big data, cloud computing. So if you have, say, 20 different companies building 20 different systems in one city, why do you absolutely need common standards? Why can't the best tech just win?
Because if you let it play out that way, you get what Moreno basically calls a technological Tower of Babel. It's chaos. Standards are the common language. If you just let 1,000 different tech flowers bloom, you can guarantee none of them will ever talk to each other. They guide how things are implemented, they set clear expectations, and they mandate interoperability. Without that, you get a patchwork of incompatible systems that government, companies, and the public have to navigate. It leads to this huge fragmentation, and that means massive inefficiencies. It costs just, they grow exponentially as you try to scale up.
Right, which immediately makes you see the value of a centralized approach. Moreno is super clear that China didn't just wait for everyone to agree. They were really proactive about setting up national standards for their smart cities, and they did it early.
That proactive centralized move is, I think, the key insight into their success. It just simplifies deployment across all these different regions. Suddenly, everyone from a small utility provider in a Tier 3 city to a huge state-owned company is working from the exact same playbook. And these standards, they aren't vague ideas. They cover the really critical stuff, like how data has to be structured and managed.
You mean things like metadata schemas and that sort of thing?
Exactly. And the specific security protocols you have to use, and the basic hardware requirements so all those IoT devices can actually communicate.
It almost sounds like they're building a national operating system for their cities. But when you mention data and security, you're talking about incredibly sensitive information. How critical are standards for keeping public trust?
Oh, they're non-negotiable. Absolutely. Moreno really flags security and trust as one of the two massive benefits. These standards mandate really tough cybersecurity protocols. They make sure that personal, sensitive data is protected from misuse. They might require specific ways to anonymize data, for instance. If you don't have those clear, enforceable rules and a big data breach happens,
Public trust just evaporates instantly.
instantly. And the whole smart city project could be completely derailed. It's the quickest way to kill a multi-billion-dollar project.
Okay, so that's one benefit. What's the other one?
The second one is the long game. It's all about scalability and adaptability. Standards are what future-proof these unbelievably expensive systems. By saying, this is the data format we use, or this is the common API, you're making sure that 5 years from now, when some new AI or a better sensor comes along, you can integrate it.
Without having to rip everything out and start over.
Exactly. It lets innovation happen on top of a stable, reliable foundation.
That idea, future-proofing through standards, that takes us right into our second segment. This is where it gets really strategic. Moreno talks about this core tension, a kind of dichotomy between national standards and global ones. China is obviously putting huge effort into its own tailored national standards. But at the same time, they're heavily involved with global groups like the ISO or ITU. What's driving that balancing act?
It really boils down to the difference between internal efficiency and external competitiveness. Domestically, their national standards are built for China's very specific needs. They have to fit the local regulations, the socio-political context, the big national 5-year plan goals, And this centralized top-down approach means they can be rolled out fast and wide across the country. An international body could never write a standard that specific.
So the national standards are like custom firmware. They're built to get the maximum performance out of one very specific, very unique system.
That is a perfect analogy. And then you contrast that with the international side of things. Organizations like ISO, their whole purpose is to create these unifying frameworks that are, technology neutral and work anywhere. China still needs those global standards because they open up cross-border collaboration. But even more critically, they make Chinese smart city tech competitive on the world stage.
Ah, okay. So if a Chinese company develops a great smart traffic system,
Right. If it already adheres to internationally recognized protocols, they can turn around and sell that system to a city in Europe or Africa or South America. It opens up massive new markets for them.
so it's not just about being users of the tech. It's about becoming global exporters and leaders. That's a very pragmatic strategy. It's incredibly pragmatic. Moreno's conclusion is that they use this really sophisticated hybrid strategy. They line up their national standards with international ones wherever it makes sense, wherever that global consistency adds market value. But they hold on to unique national standards for things like domestic control or specific data privacy rules. But the really fascinating part is that China isn't just a follower here. They are actively involved in setting these global standards. They're at the table making sure their interests and their innovations are represented. They're bridging that gap between what works at home and what sells abroad.
Okay, but this is where the grand strategy meets, let's say, the messy reality. We've got the framework, the hybrid strategy, the benefits of this fast, centralized approach. But that same speed and scale must create friction. Let's move into segment 3 and talk about the hard truths. What are the real challenges Moreno sees in actually getting this done on the ground? The biggest hurdle is a phrase Moreno uses a lot: technological heterogeneity. It's the diversity problem. I mean, just imagine trying to integrate 20 years of different technology decisions made across dozens of huge cities. You've got tech from different vendors, systems on different platforms, all started at different times by different local governments.
You mentioned the Beijing and Shanghai traffic example earlier. The IoT devices just don't talk to each other. It's like trying to run a city on 20 different operating systems that all have proprietary plugs.
That's it exactly. And that diversity makes forcing a single uniform standard on top of everything incredibly complicated. You have to make legacy systems work with brand new cloud architecture. It's a huge engineering challenge. And frankly, it's something every major smart city program in the world is struggling with.
And then you have this paradox of speed versus stability. The tech world moves so fast, standards have to be updated constantly, but as Moreno points out, these big, fast-moving urban projects, they often prioritize just getting it done now.
Yes, immediate implementation over the slower, more careful work of making sure it complies with the standard.
And that just kicks the can down the road, doesn't it?
It guarantees you'll have problems later. Rushing implementation creates these fragmented systems that you'll have to overhaul later, which will be expensive and disruptive. And then you layer on top of that all the international players, the global tech companies, the foreign consultants. They bring their own standards, their own proprietary protocols that often don't line up with Chinese practices.
So you constantly have to negotiate and harmonize everything.
Constantly. It's a built-in slowdown mechanism.
And the whole time, you're dealing with the lifeblood of the entire system.
Yeah.
The data. What's the standardization challenge there?
The data landscape is just always moving, which creates a lot of uncertainty. You need really solid standards for interoperability, making sure Shanghai's energy grid data can be used by the National Climate Platform. But you also need them for privacy and security across that whole network. And Moreno notes that the actual regulations in China for data security and privacy are, they're still evolving.
So it's hard to enforce a standard when the legal target keeps moving.
Exactly. It makes it very difficult for everyone involved to build and enforce unified technical standards with any kind of consistency.
But Moreno does end on a more positive note. It sounds like the government sees these growing pains and is trying to get ahead of them.
Oh, absolutely. They know that if they don't get a handle on this technological diversity, the whole system could collapse under its own weight.
Yeah.
So they've launched these big collaborative efforts like the National Smart City Standardization Plan. This isn't just a suggestion, it's a national roadmap. It's designed to create technically sound, enforceable standards for the most critical sectors.
Like transportation and energy.
Transportation, energy, public safety. the mission-critical stuff, the massive ongoing project, and it shows they're committed to making this hybrid strategy actually work for the long haul. So if we boil it all down, the core lesson from Moreno's chapter is this. Standards are the foundation. They seem boring, but they're the essential connective tissue. They're what lets advanced tech like AI be deployed quickly and effectively at a massive urban scale. The real challenge for China's model and for anyone else is balancing those very specific local needs with the big picture goal of global consistency.
And that trade-off, that strategic balancing act, brings us to our final thought for you to think about. Moreno really hammers home this point that standardization is what allows for smooth, affordable tech upgrades in the future. It's how you protect your investment. So here's the question. If any city, anywhere in the world, prioritizes speed, just getting a service live today, over sticking to unified, long-term standards, how much more expensive, how much more disruptive will its inevitable technology upgrade be in 5 or 10 years? It really makes you consider the hidden long-term cost of taking shortcuts. Thanks for diving deep with us. We'll catch you next time.